At Jong Wong High School, Kangwi, known as the school's famous runner, takes part in a running competition. When the race begins, Kangwi runs with great speed and manages to reach the finish line in just 10.68 seconds, which shocks everyone. Seeing this, one of the boys turns to a girl nearby and wonders if something like that is even possible. The girl then explains that Kangwi is the kind of student who is naturally good at almost every sport. Soon after that, a group of boys gathers around Kangwi, with some of them saying that he should become a track athlete, while others keep asking him how he manages to run so fast. Kangwi notices another runner named Ilrock, who finishes the race with a clean time of 12 seconds, and seeing that makes Kangwi feel quite jealous of him. The other students then begin wondering how Ilrock can be so fast even though he is a tall guy, and they say that for someone that tall to run like that is very impressive. At that moment, one of the girls asks her friend if Ilrock only appears even faster because his long legs stretch out so much while he runs. However, Kangwi, who is still jealous of him, thinks that it didn't look that fast to him. Later, everyone measures their heights and turns out Kangwi is a shorty while Ilrock is the tallest among them. It turns out, in height and personality, both are opposites, and they formed an interesting rivalry since the beginning of the semester. At the exercise area, Kangwi does 10 more push-ups than Ilrock, surprising everyone, and it shows that Kangwi's athletic ability is one level above. During the jumping exercise, Ilrock shows very impressive skill and shocks everyone with how well he performs. Because of that strong performance, the results show that he and Kangwi end up tied in the physical fitness test. On the next day, one of the boys becomes very angry at Kangwi and complains that if Kangwi had managed to win just one more event, he could have gotten free snacks from the cafeteria. After hearing this, Kangwi asks them if they had made some kind of bet about the result. One of the boys then explains that the rivalry between the two of them is currently the most interesting and talked about thing of the semester. After that, other boy wonders if there is any other sport the two of them can compete in, and he suggests games like soccer or basketball. However, another boy quickly explains that they already competed in soccer last time. One of them then thinks that basketball might be a little difficult, especially because Ilrock is also on the basketball team. Because of that, he starts mocking Kangwi and says that someone with such a short height probably cannot even play basketball properly. Kangwi tells them that he played basketball back in elementary and middle school, beating all the kids at it who were supposedly good. He also says that most of the basketball players just rely on their height, thinking that they are good at it, but in the end, they are not competent. Kangwi also begins trash talking about Ilrock and says that Ilrock is actually not that good at basketball, because if he really was that skilled, then he would have already done something useful for their school basketball team. Upon hearing that, Ilrock quietly gets up from his chair and walks straight toward Kangwi. However, instead of starting a fight or arguing with him, Ilrock simply walks past him and goes to a girl who is handing out milk packets, then calmly takes one and drinks it. After finishing that one, Ilrock picks up another milk packet and places it right on top of Kangwi's head while telling him that he should drink it and try to grow at least 1 more centimeter taller. Hearing that comment makes Kangwi extremely furious, and he immediately starts a physical fight with Ilrock right there. Because of the fight, the principal later punishes both of them for causing trouble and fighting inside the school. That same evening, Kangwi's friends ask him who ended up winning the punishment stand, and it turns out Kangwi did, since Ilrock's wrist suddenly began swelling and he could not continue. Later that night, Kangwi returns home, and when his mother sees the bruises on his face, she becomes very surprised and immediately asks him what happened to him. However, Kangwi does not answer her question and simply ignores it before quietly going to the bathroom to take a shower. After that, while lying in his bed, Kangwi begins remembering his old basketball days and thinks about how he used to be a very good player back then. On the following morning, Kangwi walks up to Ilrock and hands him some pads so he can fix and protect his wrist, and then he says that the two of them should play a one-on-one basketball match. He explains that if he loses the match, he will honestly admit that he is below Ilrock, and when the students in the classroom hear this, they become very shocked. Ilrock then responds by saying that if Kangwi manages to score even a single point against him, he will immediately quit the basketball team. After hearing that, Kangwi replies that if he cannot even score 1 point, he will accept becoming Ilrock's pet dog. Kangwi and Ilrock then arrive at the basketball court that evening, and so does the other students at the school to find out who is the real pro here. Ilrock wonders why many spectators are there but Kangwi asks him if he is nervous, saying they all just come here to see his retirement. The match then starts off with Ilrock throwing the ball in the basket first, and next, it's Kangwi's turn, who missed the free throw. After that, Ilrock starts with pushing Kangwi, and then, he easily scores another point for himself. Seeing that, some girls on the sidelines are started having feelings for Ilrock, thinking that he looks even cooler playing basketball. Furthermore, Ilrock keeps running straight toward the basket, and this time he performs a crazy dunk that completely shocks everyone watching the game. It soon becomes clear that in basketball, height can feel like a natural talent, and Ilrock keeps proving that point by scoring again and again using moves that take full advantage of his tall height. Because of that, the score quickly becomes 10-0, and now the match is only one final basket away from ending. During that last play, Kangwi suddenly manages to intercept the ball right out of Ilrock's hands, but the students watching start wondering if he can even break through the defense now that he finally has the ball. At that moment, Kangwi begins dribbling the ball and charges forward while thinking about his past. He shows an incredible level of dribbling skill, mainly because he used to practice every single night, and now he wants to prove to everyone that even short players can dominate in basketball. Ilrock then rushes forward and tries to steal the ball from Kangwi's hands, but while trying to stop him, he suddenly twists his leg and falls onto the ground. Kangwi then looks at Ilrock and says that no matter how tall he is, if he knocks him down then he is just below him. At the same time, a guy named Donghua is training at the school gym when someone suddenly opens the door and quickly tells him about the basketball match that is happening right now. After hearing that, Donghua, who is the captain of the basketball team, finally heads over to the court together with the other team players. When they arrive, Donghua asks one of the players if it is really true that Ilrock said he would quit the basketball team if he allowed even one basket to be scored against him. However, the red-haired guy replies that it honestly does not seem like that will happen at all. He explains that the height difference between them is so huge that the other guy really does not stand any chance against Ilrock. While hearing this, Donghua begins thinking that the short guy playing right now looks familiar, and he feels like he might have seen him somewhere before. Soon after that, Donghua and the red-haired guy become very surprised when they see that Kangwi actually steals the ball from Ilrock, and now it even looks like Ilrock might finally get scored on. Kangwi does his best to move around Ilrock so he can throw the ball into the basket, but during that moment Ilrock suddenly loses his balance and falls onto the ground. Seeing this, Donghua realizes that Kangwi just used an ankle breaker move, which is a move where a player drops the defender with very flashy dribbles, almost like their ankles are being broken. The audience watching the match becomes very fascinated by what just happened, and many of them even start recording everything with their phones. Kangwi then jumps high into the air to throw the ball toward the basket, but just like before, he ends up missing the shot again. When the ball does not go in, the audience becomes shocked and begins wondering if he even knows how to shoot properly, but deep down the truth is that Kangwi only spent his time practicing dribbling. After that, Ilrock begins acting as if Kangwi is his puppy, and because of their strange bet, Kangwi even starts behaving like an actual dog in front of everyone. While watching this scene, Donghua keeps thinking about the dribbling he saw earlier and feels that Kangwi's skill was truly top-notch, and it even reminds him of someone from the past. Because of that thought, Donghua quickly runs straight toward Kangwi and asks him if he used to play on the Numoyang Middle School basketball team. However, Kangwi clearly does not remember him at all, so Donghua decides to properly introduce himself first and then asks Kangwi why he never joined the basketball team at their school. After that, Donghua also invites Kangwi to become a member of their basketball team. Not long after that moment, the video that several students recorded of Kangwi's dribbling gets uploaded to many social media platforms. Even though the video clip is very short, it is still intense and exciting, and because of that it quickly gathers a large number of views online. Surprisingly, Kangwi's dribbling skill also catches the attention of the coach from Jong Wong High School. The coach then asks Donghua where Kangwi is at the moment, and Donghua replies that Kangwi is currently in the same class as Ilrock. After saying that, Donghua also explains that there is a small problem, which is that Kangwi does not seem interested in joining the basketball team at all. Hearing this, the coach tells Donghua that they cannot let a player like Kangwi slip away so easily, because someone with that kind of skill could become very important for their basketball team. To convince Kangwi, the coach decides to take their PE classes even though he teaches the first years and makes everyone play basketball. Later, in the cafeteria, Kangwi is surprised to see that the word basketball is written on his food tray. Confused, he looks up at the worker who prepared it, and to his shock, it turns out that the worker is actually the basketball coach. That evening, Kangwi's friends tell him that they feel like someone has been following them from behind, and they start guessing that it might be someone from the basketball team again. The person who has been following them is none other than Donghua himself, which makes Kangwi lose his temper, and he yells at Donghua to stop following him immediately. Donghua then steps out from the bushes and asks Kangwi why he quit playing basketball in the first place. He adds that even though Kangwi said he quit right after the second year, His dribbling is still amazing, which shows that even after leaving the team, he clearly kept practicing and stayed in touch with the ball. Jong Won explains that when Kangwi starts dribbling, his entire expression changes, and it's not the look of someone who has truly given up on basketball. Jong Won then tells Kangwi that he himself almost gave up on basketball before, so he understands how it feels to step away from the game. He encourages Kangwi to come watch a practice match after school, saying that the team will show him their basketball skills and make him want to get back on the court too. The very next day, Kangwi makes up his mind to head over to the court and watch the basketball team go through their game, having been convinced and talked into it by the things Jong Won had said to him. The team currently out on the court is made up of Jong Won, Songbin, Ilrock, and Hangil, and the four of them are already in the middle of getting things going. As the match gets underway, Jong Hai manages to get possession of the ball first, but almost immediately Kangwi picks up on something that catches him off guard as he notices that Ilrock is actually left-handed, which raises the question in his mind of why Ilrock jumped for the tip-off using his left hand. Kangwi comes to the realization that the reason things played out the way they did in their earlier encounter might actually be because Ilrock has been dealing with a nagging wrist problem right from the very beginning and has been playing through it the entire time without making it obvious. The thought that he actually lost a one-on-one matchup against someone who was not even at full health and was quietly managing an injury throughout the whole thing hits Kangwi hard and leaves him feeling genuinely caught off guard and unsettled in a way he was not expecting to feel when he walked over to watch the game that day. The ball is now in Jong Hai's possession, and they immediately begin moving with their set pattern right from the opening moments without any hesitation. The coach then turns to Kangwi and asks him whether he is curious about why they want him on their team so badly, which immediately grabs Kangwi's attention and gets him wondering, but the coach simply tells him that he will understand everything once he sits down and watches the game play out for himself. Right as one of the Jong Hai players makes an attempt to throw the ball into the basket, Jong Won steps in at just the right moment and intercepts it cleanly before turning around and telling his teammates to take off and run after it with everything they have. In the meantime, the coach leans over to Kangwi and explains that their team is built entirely around the concept of running and executing fast breaks at every possible opportunity, and that they are a team that carries the dream of winning nationals by playing an up-tempo run and gun style of basketball that never slows down. Back in the mid-1980s, the Los Angeles Lakers games that were shown on TV were a huge shock for the coach, because at that time he was only a 24-year-old college student still figuring out his future. After watching those fast and exciting games, he became completely fascinated with the run-and-gun style of basketball. Even though he could not continue playing as a professional player himself, he decided that he would still follow his passion by coaching a team that plays that same fast style. He then explains to Kangwi that the journey was not easy at all, because when he first started the basketball team after joining Jong Wong High as a PE teacher, the team was very weak and struggled a lot. Hearing that story makes Kangwi surprised, because it means the coach has been at the school since the very founding of the team, which was already more than 30 years ago. Furthermore, the coach continues explaining that as modern basketball slowly changed over the years, more and more people began to doubt his style of basketball, and those doubts about the way he teaches the game only kept growing with time. One of the officials told coach that he should just follow the trends now and stop sticking to just running basketball and try to build a team that can get better results. However, the coach still couldn't give up on his beliefs as basketball that makes the crowd cheer, basketball that makes the players happy. Kangwi then asks the coach what's the point if someone can't keep playing it when the results don't come, so the coach starts laughing and asks him if he didn't hear they made it to the quarterfinals in the Spring League tournament this past March. Kangwi feels surprised after hearing that and starts thinking that reaching the main tournament is not something that can happen just by luck or coincidence. The coach then explains to him that their team has actually been reaching the main tournament since last year's competition, and this year they are expecting even better results, especially now that Ilrock has joined the team. He continues by saying that at the moment, the run-and-gun style built around Jong Won is bringing the best results he has seen in his entire coaching career. Meanwhile, the match continues on the court. The ball rebounds back toward Ilrock, but instead of holding it, he quickly passes it to one of his teammates and immediately begins running forward again. After a few quick passes, the ball eventually reaches Jong Won. At the same time, the coach explains to Kangwi that when they reached the main tournament, they realized that the level there was much higher, and that was the moment they truly felt their own shortcomings as a team. Because of that, the coach tells Kangwi that if he decides to join the team, they might be able to climb even higher than they have before. During the match, Ilrock shows a very strong performance in front of the opposing team and uses many different techniques while playing. Soon after, he manages to throw the ball into the basket and scores another point for his team, which makes the score gap grow even wider. Seeing this, the coach of the opposing team begins thinking that their freshman players simply cannot keep up with Ilrock's level. Because of that, he tells another large player on their team named Dooman to start getting ready. However, the blonde-haired boy sitting beside the coach asks if he is going to play in the match himself, but the coach refuses and explains that today's game is meant only for the freshman players. After that, the first quarter ends with Donghwa's team holding a strong lead of 12 points. Donghwa then walks over to Kangwi and tells him that the team would become much stronger if he played as a guard for them. Right then, a red-haired guy shows up and hands Kangwi a new uniform. He asks Kangwi if he wants to try playing in the second quarter, but Kangwi immediately freaks out because Donghwa had only told him to come and watch the game. Seeing this, the coach instead tells Yunsong to play as guard in the second quarter. Soon after that, the second quarter begins, and Jong Hai finally brings out their starting center. During the play, the ball reaches Ilrock, and he tries his best to break through the defense, but Dooman stands firmly in front of him and blocks his path completely. Earlier, the blonde-haired player had told Dooman that Ilrock's right arm seemed uncomfortable. He explained that even though Ilrock is right-handed, he had only been doing left-side drives and finishing with his left hand throughout the entire first quarter. Because of that observation, he advised Dooman to focus on blocking Ilrock's left side during their one-on-one defense. Ilrock then shoots the ball towards the basket, but it just rebounds to the opposite team's player who then throws a three-pointer shot just like that. Everyone now thinks that the atmosphere completely changed ever since Dooman entered the court. Dooman turns to Ilrock and tells him straight out that this is only a practice game, so if his right hand is giving him trouble and causing him pain, then he should not be pushing himself through it and should just sit out instead. The match then continues with Ilrock getting his hands on the ball and doing everything he possibly can to try and get past Dooman, but no matter what he tries, he simply cannot find a way through. Because of the injury to his right hand, he ends up missing the shot once again, and the ball then finds its way back over to Jong Hai's side as a result. At this point there is only an 8-point difference separating the two teams, and Jong Wong High decides to use that moment to call a timeout. During the timeout, the players gather around Ilrock and ask him whether everything is alright with him, and the coach steps in and takes a closer look at his right hand, quickly noticing that the condition of his wrist is actually really bad. The coach makes the decision to pull Ilrock out and substitute him with Sanjian, and he also reassigns Dooman to take on the responsibility of guarding Donghwa going forward. Kangwi watches all of this play out from where he is sitting and finds himself wondering why Ilrock pushed himself so hard even though this was not even an official game, and the coach tells him that Ilrock simply wanted to prove something to the people watching. After that, Jong Wong High lost even more strength without Ilrock, and Jong Hai came alive with teamwork, cantered around Dooman and began chasing the score. Donghwa is now going one-on-one with Dooman and trying his absolute best to stop him. He even manages to block Yushin's shot that gets the ball to another player who starts running to the other side. The player then tries to pass the ball to Donghwa, but his shot gets intercepted, which makes the opposite team's coach think that Jong Wong High has explosive power, but they are still unstable. At that moment, Kangwi wears the uniform and tells the coach that he wants to start running with Jong Wong High's run and gun. After that, Kangwi gets substituted into the match, and everyone around is genuinely excited and buzzing with anticipation to see him out there playing alongside the rest of the team. Donghwa then passes the ball back to Kangwi, and as he starts dribbling, he thinks to himself that everything feels a little awkward and unfamiliar after having been away from the game for such a long stretch of time. However, one of the players on the opposing team looks over at Kangwi and wonders to himself whether this guy is really serious about going pro, because based on what he is seeing and given how short Kangwi is in terms of height, it simply does not look like someone who belongs at that level. Kangwi then finds himself trying to figure out what the best move is for him to make in what is shaping up to be a slow, but before he has too much time to overthink it, he just starts dribbling and weaves his way around the opposing player so quickly and smoothly that the guy barely even has time to react before Kangwi is already past him. Kangwi then fires off a quick and precise pass over to the red-headed guy, who receives it cleanly and puts up a two-point shot that travels straight into the basket without any trouble at all. The red-headed guy then turns to Kangwi and tells him that it was a really good pass, but Kangwi tries to stay humble and grounded about it and just tells him casually that it was nothing special and was really just a pretty normal pass. While watching everything happening on the court, the blonde-haired guy thinks that there is clearly something truly different and special about Kangwi, even though he cannot properly explain what exactly that difference is. The game then keeps going as Dooman and his teammates start doing screen plays on the court, working together to make space, and after that one of them tries to shoot the ball into the basket, but the shot misses and the ball simply bounces back off the rim. The ball then goes to Donghwa, who quickly passes it back to Kangwi while suggesting that he should try running with it. Right after getting the ball, Kangwi suddenly starts running in a fast zigzag pattern across the court, moving so quickly that it surprises everyone watching, and none of the players are able to stop him at all. In just a moment he reaches the three-point line, and this makes one of the opponent team players very angry because he feels that Kangwi is looking down on them and not taking them seriously. Even so, Kangwi notices that this same guy has been running around like crazy since earlier in the game, but despite that he performs a behind-the-back dribble and then quickly runs forward again straight toward the basket. The opponent player then tries his best to catch up to Kangwi, but he couldn't and manages to slip on the ground. Kangwi takes the advantage of the moment and throws the ball inside the basket, scoring another point for the team. Donghua then asks Kangwi if he can actually do layups, but Kangwi quietly wonders how much of a beginner Donghua thinks he really is. The blonde-haired guy then comments that Kangwi clearly is not an ordinary player at all. He asks his coach if he can go and play as well now since the other team has finally brought out their secret weapon. However, the coach refuses his request and tells him that he is still not ready to enter the game yet. On the other side, the players from Jong Wong High think that even without Ilrock on the court, they are not getting pushed back at all, and instead they feel like they themselves are pushing the other team even harder. Soon after that, the ball once again reaches Kangwi, and he simply keeps breaking through the defense while continuing to run forward. As he runs, Kangwi remembers how back in middle school he often felt like he was running completely alone during games, but here it feels different because everyone is following his pace and rhythm. Because of that, the space that is created while everyone runs together makes it feel like a path that was once blocked is slowly opening up, and just like the long runway used by airplanes before takeoff, his teammates end up creating that same kind of path for Kangwi's leap. Kangwi then goes ahead and scores another point for the team, and everyone around him is just genuinely thrilled and excited to have him playing alongside them. In that moment, Kangwi finally comes to a real understanding of what Jong Wong High's run and gun style of basketball truly means at its core, and he thinks to himself that if he continues to play basketball in this kind of environment and system, he can genuinely push himself to climb even higher than he ever has before. He then finds himself wondering that if he does manage to climb that high, whether he would eventually get the chance to come face to face with that certain guy again and finally have the opportunity to overcome him once and for all. As it turns out, the match wraps up with Jong Wong High coming out on top and winning the game with a final score of 78 points, and after everything is said and done the coaches from both teams walk over and greet each other in a respectful and friendly manner. The opposing team's coach tells Jongwang's coach that it was a genuinely good and valuable experience for his freshman players to go through and also acknowledges that Jong Wong High has gotten noticeably stronger with Donghua now being a senior and bringing that experience and leadership to the team. Jongwang's coach fires back by saying that Yusoan High is absolutely no joke either and should not be underestimated, adding that if a student by the name of Lee Knoll had actually been out there playing today, the final result of the match could very easily have turned out to be something completely different. Meanwhile, Knoll walks over to Kangwi and tells him that his dribbling looked really impressive, and then he asks if Kangwi is a freshman. Kangwi replies that he is indeed just a freshman, and after hearing that, Knoll explains that he himself is the third-year captain of the team. Hearing this makes Kangwi wonder why Knoll did not play in the match earlier even though he is the captain. Knoll then tells him that they will have a proper match against each other next time, which surprises Kangwi, so Knoll explains that their teams are going to face each other in the upcoming Federation President's Cup tournament. Before leaving the place, Knoll tells Kangwi that even if their teams do not meet during the preliminary rounds, they will eventually see each other at the top as long as both teams keep climbing higher in the tournament. After hearing that, Kangwi responds by explaining that he himself has also played a game after a very long time today, so he could not perform as well as he wanted, but next time they will not lose either. When Donghua and the red-haired guy hear this conversation, they immediately become excited because they realize that Kangwi is most likely going to join the basketball team. The next day, word spreads quickly throughout the school about Kangwi joining the basketball team, and one of his friends comes up to him and mentions that they heard from someone on the basketball team that he was amazing during yesterday's practice game. Kangwi then tells them that he made some of the Yusoan High guys fall flat on their faces and had them completely stumped, and he also lets his friends know that their proper training is set to begin the following day, which means he is going to be pretty busy from here on out. The day after that, Ilrock shows up at the gym and gets straight into his training, but Donghua comes over and tells him that he really should be resting and giving himself time to recover properly until his injury has fully healed up. Ilrock brushes that concern aside and tells him that it is just a wrist injury and that he is going to be perfectly fine, adding that he personally wants to use this time to work on improving the skills in his left hand while he has the opportunity to focus on it. Ilrock then looks around the gym and notices that Kangwi is over in the corner doing the exact same training that he himself has been doing, and that sight immediately stirs up a feeling of jealousy inside him, which pushes him to match what Kangwi is doing and keep up with him step for step. After that, Kangwi moves on to some dribbling practice, and the level of skill and control he displays while doing it leaves everyone else in the gym watching with wide eyes, with all of them thinking to themselves that his dribbling is simply incredible no matter how many times they watch it. Ilrock also does not stay behind and starts practicing the same dribble move that Kangwi used earlier, while Donghua warns him not to push himself too much or overdo it. After that, Ilrock shoots the ball toward the basket, and when the ball hits the pole, it simply bounces back, so he quickly jumps up, catches it in the air, and puts it inside the basket. When Kangwi sees this, he becomes very frustrated and thinks about the fact that the rim's height is 305 centimeters while his own height is only 168 centimeters. Kangwi then quickly grabs a ball and tries to attempt the same move himself, while thinking that his sergeant jump record is 86 centimeters, so if he jumps with a running start he might be able to reach it. However, it turns out that a sergeant jump is actually a method used to measure jump height by jumping from a completely still and standing position without taking any running start first. To everyone's surprise, Kangwi ends up falling on the ground. All the players then run up to Kangwi to ask if he alright, but he just tells them that he is alright. The coach then starts laughing at Kangwi that he must be comfortable in the gym already, lying down and resting. The coach then sits on a chair and asks them if they want to start the real training now. After that, the training with Kangwi doing his absolute best, but he just couldn't take it anymore. Donghua and the red-haired talks about how he lasted pretty long for his first day of training. Kangwi then walks up to the coach and asks why they are doing these kinds of training when said that they would just play basketball that makes players happy. The coach then tells him that run and gun requires a lot of running, and to enjoy run and gun, he needs the stamina to support it. Donghua then says that many students couldn't handle this stamina training and quit, and for a quarterfinals team, there are too few members, and they left because they couldn't handle the tough stamina training. He also says that it looks flashy and fun on the outside, but to enjoy the game, he has to endure this hellish training normally. Just then, a hot girl shows up at the gym and calls the coach by the name Grandpa and asks if he were just making them do stamina training again. The girl then walks over to Kangwi and introduces herself as Unchai, a second-year manager for the team. She then asks him whether the stamina training was really as tough and brutal as it looked, and Kangwi immediately tries to play it cool and act tough by telling her that this kind of training only serves to make him stronger and better. Hearing that confident response, the girl simply looks at him and tells him matter of fact that he should go ahead and clean up that puddle of vomit over there before the next round of training gets started, which completely deflates his tough guy act. The red-haired guy then wanders over to Kangwi and casually mentions that Unchai had actually been present and watching at the practice game the previous day as well. After that, the practice game portion of the session gets underway with the team moving the ball around and passing it back and forth between each other in a smooth and coordinated way. From that point, the days began to settle into a kind of rhythm where enjoyable and lighter moments with the manager would alternate back and forth with the brutal and exhausting training sessions that the coach put them through without showing any mercy. The coach takes time to teach Kangwi all about the basic fast formation that the team relies on, explaining how the formation shifts and changes during counterattacks and what it looks like once the backcourt has been properly set up and organized. Day by day, Kangwi slowly begins to find his place and starts blending more naturally into Jong Wong High's fast run and gun style of basketball. During class time, Kangwi usually sleeps at his desk, but when it comes to training, he keeps working hard and slowly begins to show better results. Seeing this, Donghua says it is a good thing because he had been worried that Kangwi might quit due to how tough the training sessions are, but it turns out that Kangwi has surprisingly strong mental strength. At the same time, Unchai asks Ilrock if his wrist is doing okay now, and Ilrock replies that the hospital already checked it and said that it has fully healed. After the training session wraps up, Unchai steps forward and announces to everyone that they are going to be having a 5-on-5 team practice game today. She then gets to work dividing everyone up into two separate teams, and as things get split up, one of the teams ends up having both Ilrock and Kangwi placed on it together. However, the other team gets put together with Donghua, Songbin, and Yunsong on it. The moment Kangwi and Ilrock see how the teams have been divided up, the two of them immediately start arguing with each other because neither one of them has any interest in being on the same team as the other, and Kangwi even goes as far as walking up to Unchai and asking her directly to go ahead and switch the teams around, but she flat out refuses to do it and holds firm on her decision. The practice match then gets started with Kangwi receiving the ball first, and as he looks around and reads the situation, he notices that Ilrock's side of the court is wide open, so he goes ahead and sends a pass in his direction. However, it turns out that the whole thing was actually a fake and a misdirection move, as Kangwi suddenly takes off running forward himself and attempts to throw the ball into the basket, but Donghua comes flying in from seemingly out of nowhere and gets a hand on the ball to intercept it before it can go in. Seeing that, everyone around reacts with surprise, and one of the other players turns to Kangwi and tells him that he really should have just passed the ball over to Ilrock when he had the chance, but Kangwi responds by saying that he genuinely thought he was in a good enough position to finish it on his own. The ball then finds its way over to the opposing team's red-haired guy, who steps up and fires a two-point shot that travels straight into the basket without any difficulty. The ball then gets to Ilrock, but rather than passing it over to Kangwi, who is standing right there directly in front of him and clearly open, Ilrock deliberately chooses to send the ball to a completely different player on the team instead. Eunchae watches all of this play out and thinks to herself that both of them are being completely childish about the whole situation, and that the two of them need to figure out how to sync up and get on the same page quickly, or the team is going to end up on the losing side because of it. The match then continues with Kangwi repeatedly trying to get Ilrock's attention and practically begging him to just pass the ball back to him, but Ilrock acts as though Kangwi does not even exist and sends the ball off to yet another teammate instead, and before that pass can even reach its intended target, the red-haired guy steps in and steals it away cleanly. In the end, Team A ends up losing the practice match entirely because their teamwork is so poor and their inability to cooperate with each other properly costs them throughout the entire game. The Best Player award for the match goes to Donghua, who puts together an impressive individual performance and finishes with a total of 16 points scored during the game. At the same time, the title of Worst Player goes to Kangwi because his performance is terrible, with 5 turnovers, 4 fouls, and 1 disgusting play recorded during the match. After the game ends, Kangwi gets angry and starts blaming Ilrock for causing the team to lose, but Ilrock immediately tells him to stay quiet because he believes Kangwi is actually the worst player there. Kangwi keeps provoking him and says that Ilrock's hand is probably not fully healed yet, since the play he made earlier was not something that would normally come from a healthy person's hand. Ilrock then responds by saying that if Kangwi had simply passed the ball on time, the match would have been much easier and there would not have been so many turnovers. Hearing them continue to argue like that, Eunchae becomes furious with both of them and tells them that they both share the blame for losing the game equally. As punishment, she orders both of them to stay behind and clean the gym, and she warns them that if the place is not properly cleaned, they will end up getting into even more trouble. Afterward, Kangwi asks Ilrock if he wants to go one-on-one match and the loser does all the cleaning. Sometime later, Ilrock leaves the gym, which surprises Donghua, so he asks Ilrock if he has already finished cleaning. However, Ilrock casually tells him that he left the rest of the work to his puppy. It soon turns out that Kangwi once again lost the match against Ilrock like he usually does. Later that night, Kangwi returns home very late, and his mother asks him how the basketball team activities are going. Kangwi answers that everything is fine and explains that everyone on the team takes good care of him. After that, Kangwi's dad asks him about the dormitory life at Jong Wong High. Kangwi explains that the school used to have a dormitory until a few years ago, but the operations were stopped because the team had not been getting good results for quite some time and there were not many members left. Hearing this, Kangwi's mom asks if that means his basketball team is weak, and his sister quickly adds that a strong team would never accept someone with his height anyway. Kangwi then explains to everyone that their team actually managed to make it all the way to the quarterfinals during the Spring League tournament back in March, and he also brings up the fact that there is even a center player in their grade who stands at around the 2-meter mark in height, which is a significant advantage to have on their side. Kangwi also makes it clear to everyone that now that he is part of the team, their expectations need to go higher and they need to push further in the main tournament than they have before, and he lays out the specific goal of becoming the Seoul region representatives at the National Sports Festival taking place in October. The very next day, Eunchae gathers the whole team together in the gym and lets them know that today is the day for the Federation President's Cup bracket draw, and that they are all going to sit down and watch it happen live together. After that, everyone settles in and watches the live stream as the draw gets underway, and during the whole process Kangwi sits there feeling genuinely anxious about the possibility of their team getting drawn into the same preliminary group as Yujin High right from the very start. As it turns out, Jong Wong High ends up being placed in the same group as Tay Jong Hai, which prompts Kangwi to turn to Donghua and ask him what the deal is with Tay Jong Hai and why that name seems to mean something. Donghua then explains to him that Tay Jong Hai is the school that knocked them out of the competition when they reached the quarterfinals during the Spring League tournament back in March. Unchai then steps in and explains to everyone that Tay Jong Hai is a well-established and traditionally powerful school based out of Busan that advances to the national tournament main rounds as the Busan regional representative pretty much every single year without fail, and that they are the kind of team that simply overpowers and physically dominates their opponents with a forceful and aggressive style of play. The representative on the live stream then goes ahead and announces that Wapyeong High School has also been assigned to Group E alongside both Jong Wong High and Tay Jong Hai, which catches everyone watching by complete surprise. As it turns out, Wapyeong High happens to be their sole regional representative team, and they are known for advancing to the tournament main rounds with relative ease every year while consistently competing with Yujin High for the sole regional representative spot, making them a genuinely serious and well-respected program. After that, the moment comes for Yujin High's group assignment to be revealed, and to everyone's surprise they do not end up getting placed in the same group as Jong Wong High, which is a development that brings some level of relief to certain people watching. Later that same evening, Donghua seeks out Kangwi and approaches him with a request, asking whether he would be willing to stay and help him get some extra practice in. The two of them then get to work and begin their training session together, and from that point the days continue to pass as the team prepares, until finally the day of the tournament arrives and all of the players packs their bags and gather together in anticipation of what is ahead. Kangwi is genuinely caught off guard and surprised when he sees that their basketball team actually has a bus available for them to use, and he thinks to himself that the level of support and resources the team has access to is actually a lot better than he had been expecting going into this. Another boy then leans over and fills Kangwi in by telling him that it is the soccer team's exclusive bus and that they always manage to get access to it through connections that their coach has built up over the years. The boys then all somehow squeeze and cram themselves into that tiny bus together, and once they are on their way Donghua tells everyone to pass around the booklet so that they can all go through and check the tournament schedule one more time before they arrive. One of the boys starts reading through the schedule out loud and his eyes go wide with surprise when he sees that they are looking at 3 consecutive days of games back to back, which means that every single one of them is going to need to be very careful and smart about managing their physical condition and energy levels throughout the whole stretch. It also comes out at that point that Unchai is not going to be able to make the trip and come along with them because she has classes that she cannot miss. Donghua then addresses everyone and points out that it is going to take around 3 full hours just to get to the venue, so he suggests that they use that travel time productively by watching footage from last year's matches against their upcoming opponents so they can start preparing mentally before they even step off the bus. While the coach is driving, Kangwi asks him if he is really okay with doing such long-distance driving. The coach calmly replies that it is not a problem for him at all because he is already very used to driving for long hours and actually enjoys it a lot. After traveling for about 3 hours, the team finally arrives at the stadium, and everyone feels stiff and cramped from sitting in the vehicle for so long. As they get out, Donghua suddenly lifts the coach up like he is carrying a small baby, which surprises the others, and the coach quickly tells the team to hurry because they have about 30 minutes of advance court time that has already been reserved for them. Once they go inside the gym, Donghua tells the red-haired teammate to start warming up lightly and check how his shooting feels before the practice begins. While going through their warm-up, the team then notices that the students from Wapyeong High are also out on the other side of the court getting their own practice in at the same time. When Kangwi gets a look at them, he puts it together in his head that their team is scheduled to go up against Wapyeong High on the 3rd day of the tournament, which means that matchup is still a little way off. However, one of his teammates then fills him in by explaining that this is actually the same school that they faced and played against the last time around during the league preliminary matches, so there is some familiarity with them already. The red-headed guy then mentions that their coach has a reputation for selecting and recruiting players specifically based on height as one of the main criteria, but Ilrock jumps in quickly and says in a cutting tone that Kangwi could never get into a school like that no matter what, not even if he died and somehow came back to life to try again. On top of all of that, the team also notices a foreign player on the Wapyeong side by the name of Zion Harris, whose father happens to be American, and this guy immediately grabs everyone's attention. Zion Harris then proceeds to completely stun and impress everyone watching by throwing down a powerful two-handed dunk that leaves the whole area buzzing. After seeing that, Donghua decides that he wants to show off a dunk of his own in response, but when he goes up and attempts it, the ball simply hits the side of the basket and bounces right back out, leaving him standing there completely embarrassed in front of everybody. Next, Ilsik decides to show off his dunk instead as he runs straight towards the basket, and before jumping, he taps the ball on the ground and then quickly does a back dunk. Soon after that, the court inspection and the warm-up session both come to an end. Kangwi is walking alone through the corridor while thinking about the players from Wapyeong High. He notices that those guys, even their guards, all seem to be close to 180 centimeters in height. As he thinks about it, he also remembers that several players from that team kept looking in his direction earlier and were whispering among themselves, which made him feel annoyed. Just then, Kangwi overhears 3 players from that team talking about his height, and they say that when they first saw him, they honestly thought he was a middle school student. Hearing those words immediately makes Kangwi furious, and just as he is about to step forward and confront them, Ilrock suddenly appears out of nowhere and interrupts the situation. Ilrock then explains to the players that Kangwi is like a small puppy who happens to have a bit of a nasty personality. He also adds that if they underestimate Kangwi just because of his size, they might end up tripping and falling later. The boys then ask Ilrock how long he has been standing there listening to them. Ilrock calmly replies that he has been there since earlier, from the moment they first started disrespecting their school. Ilrock then tells him that if they gather to disrespect others this much, he wonders how amazing their skills must be. On his way back, Ilrock notices Kangwi but he just continues walking, so Kangwi follows him. Kangwi then tells him that even if he hadn't stepped up, he was going to go say something. Later on, the boys go up to the coach and bring up the fact that they got a look at the Jong High kids and how noticeably different and on another level, they seem to be compared to what they are used to facing. One of the boys then turns to the others and asks who they think is going to come out on top in tomorrow's match between Tay Jong Hai and Jong High. The boy who gets asked responds by pointing out that it really does not matter all that much which one of them wins, because Jong Wong High is going to have to find a way to beat one of them either way before everything is said and done. However, the coach then redirects everyone's attention by asking the team whether they are actually focused and thinking about their own game coming up tomorrow against Jong High. Hearing that, the mood in the group shifts noticeably as everyone starts getting visibly nervous and a little unsettled, and one of them even pipes up and points out that Jong High is a team that has never once managed to make it through to the main tournament, as though that fact alone should be enough to calm everyone's nerves. Another one of the boys then turns to the coach and asks him outright whether they are going to be able to win against Jong High, and the red-headed guy chimes in and adds that they should be able to beat a team like Jong High without too much trouble. However, the coach fires back by asking them whether they can really be so sure about that. As it turns out, Jong High has a player by the name of Harem who happens to be the single tallest high school player in the entire nation. Hearing that, everyone immediately reacts with genuine surprise at the revelation. The coach then follows that up by asking them whether they even know if Jong Hai's guards are right-handed or left-handed players. Not a single one of the players is able to answer that question, which makes it clear how little preparation they have actually done. So the coach pushes further and asks them whether any of them have any real knowledge or understanding of how the forwards on Jong Hai's team like to play their game. The coach then makes a broader and more important point by telling them plainly that there is no game in existence that any team can go into feeling 100% certain about the outcome, and that an opponent who everyone assumes is weak can quietly creep up and close the gap before anyone even realizes what is happening, or can even go ahead and take the lead entirely if the other team is not careful and focused. On top of that, the coach adds that by the same token a team can sometimes turn around and beat an opponent that they genuinely believed they had absolutely no chance of defeating, because that is simply the unpredictable and beautiful nature of sports, and because of that reality they need to go out there tomorrow and give absolutely everything they have regardless of who they are lining up against. He then wraps things up by telling the players directly that whether it is Jong High that they got a look at today or Tay Jong Hai that knocked them out during the spring tournament, none of that matters right now and they need to put all of their focus and energy entirely on tomorrow's game against Jong High first and nothing else. That same night, Donghua pulls out his dumbbells and gets started on his lifting routine, but one of the other guys looks over at him and asks whether it is not a hassle and a pain to carry those things around with him everywhere he goes. Donghua barely even looks up before telling the guy that he should go ahead and knock out 3 sets himself, because it will do a good job of clearing his head and settling his mind before they all try to get some rest ahead of the big day tomorrow. Meanwhile, the red-headed guy is busy carrying out his own personal pre-game ritual by laying out 3 jelly candies in front of him and carefully deciding which one he is going to eat first. After making his choice, he then commits to practicing 100 shooting forms back-to-back, and he explains to his roommate that this whole routine is the very reason why his shots tend to go in so consistently and reliably during actual games. On the other side, Ilrock and Kangwi end up being placed in the same room together, and Ilrock is sitting there feeling pretty anxious and unsettled about the tall guy from Jong High, thinking to himself that he needs to wrap up what he is doing and find some footage to watch and study before it gets too late. Kangwi then comes barreling into him while running around the room, which immediately irritates Ilrock, and he tells Kangwi to quit running around the place and just stay still for once, but Kangwi fires back and tells him that he is perfectly free to run around however he wants in his own room and that Ilrock has no say in it. Right at that moment, Donghua shows up at their room door and pokes his head in before asking Kangwi to step outside and come with him for a bit. The two of them then head out together into the somewhat creepy and quiet neighborhood surrounding the place they are staying, and Donghua turns to Kangwi and asks him whether he is feeling nervous given that it has been quite a while since he last participated in a proper tournament. Feeling a little bit nervous on the inside but not wanting to show it, Kangwi tells him that all tournaments are basically the same thing to him at the end of the day, so he does not really find himself caring all that much about the opponents they are going up against. However, Donghua explains that even before Kangwi joined the basketball team, he already thought their team was quite well organized. He says that whenever they tried to look for counterattack chances, the players would constantly run around the court together to create openings. Donghua then adds that he used to think that this was their strongest weapon when they faced other teams, including his own, and he talks about how everyone on their team has been working together and running even more so they can keep improving and climb higher. He further explains that in their run-and-gun style of play, which depends on very quick counterattacks, there was always a small gap where the ball would not connect smoothly between players. But when he saw Kangwi's dribbling skills, he felt like he had finally found the answer that could fix that missing part in their play. Moreover, Donghua tells him that he is the person who will break through when their team's path is blocked. The next day, the first match of the tournament is between Jong Wong High and Myong High. The redhead notices that there are quite some more spectators today. Ilrock remains completely focused on the opposing team's tallest player even as they are getting ready. Everyone around begins to realize that this guy looks even bigger and more imposing in person than he did in any footage or description they had come across beforehand. Donghua takes a careful look at the tall player and thinks to himself that he does not particularly look like the raw power type, and he turns to Ilrock and asks him directly whether he feels like he can handle going up against him. Ilrock says that he can absolutely take him on head-to-head without any problem, but at that same moment Kangwi is standing there quietly dealing with a knot of nerves that he is trying his best to keep under control. After all the pre-game tension and conversation, the players from both teams make their way out and get into their starting positions on the court. The match then gets officially underway with Myong High winning possession of the ball right from the opening tip-off, largely due to the enormous height advantage that their tall player brings to the tip-off situation. Donghua immediately calls out to his teammates and tells everyone to get into their defensive positions and focus up. The ball then finds its way to Myong Hai's tallest player, who goes up and throws it inside the basket with surprising ease despite Ilrock putting in every bit of effort he had to try and stop him from scoring. Watching that, the coach stands on the sideline and thinks to himself that this game is simply not going to be easy for anyone involved on either side. The match continues with the crowd cheering loudly and enthusiastically for the tall guy named Harem, but Kangwi is still standing there in a state of shock as he takes in just how absolutely massive Harem looks when you are standing right there in front of him on the same court. Over in the audience seating area, a guy is busy snapping pictures of the match as it unfolds, and he thinks to himself that this is actually a really interesting and compelling matchup to be covering. He then makes up his mind that he is going to write an article centered around the contrast between the tournament's shortest and tallest players, and the girl sitting right beside him immediately reacts and tells him that it would be absolutely perfect material for the cover. The girl then turns to the man and asks him about the number 11 player on Myong Hai's roster, and he responds by telling her that Myong Hai's coach had been carefully developing and nurturing that particular player as someone with a lot of promise and potential going forward. The girl watching from the sidelines gets completely surprised when she sees that even someone as skilled and experienced as Ilrock is getting visibly flustered and thrown off simply because of how tall Harem is and how much of a physical presence he brings to every single play, making it clear that Harem's size and reach are causing real problems for everyone on Jong Wong High's side of the court regardless of how talented or prepared they thought they were coming into this game. During the match, Ilrock and Donghua work together and set up a screenplay that manages to get Harem caught up and tangled in it pretty easily, creating what looks like a genuine opening. Ilrock then drives his way over toward the basket area to go up and score, and Donghua looks on thinking to himself that it should be a straightforward and easy score given how the play developed. Out of nowhere, Harem extends his incredibly long reach out and gets a hand on the ball, and after a brief struggle he manages to block the shot entirely and prevent the score from happening. The ball then finds its way to number 30 of Myong Hai, who immediately takes off and pushes the pace by going for a fast break right away without giving Jong Wong High any time to recover and get back on defense. Myong Hai then manages to convert that opportunity into a three-point score, which even catches the guy sitting up in the press box completely off guard as he cannot quite believe that they pulled that off the way they did. The match then continues once again with Jong Hai getting possession of the ball and moving it over to Harem, who goes up and adds yet another score to his team's total without much trouble at all. The man watching from the stands thinks to himself that Jong Wong High is definitely not the kind of team that is just going to roll over and accept being dominated without fighting back hard. Jong Wang's coach then thinks that fast break situation is not favorable, and he quickly tells Kangwi to use a pattern technique. However, Harem also notices their coach giving single to Kangwi. The match then continues with the red head moving towards the other side as part of the pattern. Jong Wong then sets up down screens on both sides of the court in an attempt to create some open looks, and the ball ends up in Kangwi's hands, who then send a pass over toward the red-headed guy, but another player comes flying in out of nowhere and intercepts it before it can get there. Harem then takes off running straight ahead after stealing the ball away from one of the other guys, which leaves everyone watching completely stunned as they try to figure out how someone that tall managed to move early enough to cut that passing lane off the way he did. Donghwa quickly calls out to his teammates and warns them to stop Harem because he is driving his way into the paint and they need to get back and cut him off. Harem then makes a quick and sharp pass back to one of his teammates just as the defense is collapsing on him, and that teammate catches it and immediately fires up a three-point attempt that goes cleanly straight into the basket. The player who hit that shot turns out to be Yuziang, who plays the guard position for Jong Hai. Seeing that play develop and finish the way it did, the guy up in the press box thinks to himself that Jong Hai was essentially using Harem as bait the entire time to draw the defense in and create a wide-open three-point look for Yuziang on the outside, and on top of that Yuziang clearly has the range and confidence to knock those shots down, which shows that Jong Hai is building some really strong early momentum. With the game still going, there are now just 8 minutes remaining until the match comes to an end, and at this point in time Jong Hai is sitting at 7 points while Jong Wong High has still not managed to put a single point on the board and remains stuck at 0. The ball is now in Kangwi's hands, but he immediately finds himself getting blocked and pressured by one of the Jong Hai players who is right up in his space. Kangwi and the red-headed guy then work together and execute a screenplay designed to shake off the Jong Hai players who are clamping down on them, and once they create a little bit of room Kangwi sends the ball over to Donghwa, who quickly gives it right back to the red-headed guy. The moment the red-headed guy gets the ball in his hands he wastes absolutely no time and fires it straight ahead toward the basket, but the shot hits the rim and bounces back out without going in. Donghwa then reacts quickly and gets to the rebound before anyone else can, using a tip-in technique to lightly and precisely tap the ball as it comes off the rim and redirect it into the basket for the score. The tip-in is a move where a player catches a ball that has just bounced off the rim and gently taps it back up and in rather than pulling it down and resetting. During that, Donghwa also ends up making contact with one of the Jong Hai players in the process, and he comments that their bodies are just way too stiff as he pushes past them. Jong Wong High gets on the board when Donghwa's basket goes in just 2 minutes into the game, while Jong Hai keeps their movements going in an effort to hold on to the early momentum they have built up. The Jong Hai players then spend a good portion of the game moving the ball around and passing it back and forth between each other, and the one who is consistently delivering the most accurate passes out of all of them turns out to be Harem himself. A guy watching the match from the stands thinks to himself that because Harem is so incredibly tall, his passes just sail over everyone else and find their target, and because of that he is essentially dominating the flow of the game simply by throwing the ball up high. Harem then gets the ball once again and drives his way toward the basket with the intention of going up and putting it in, but he releases the ball and commits to the shot. Donghwa comes in and intercepts it cleanly, catching Harem completely off guard. Donghwa then turns to Ilrock and tells him that from what he has been observing out there, it seems like Harem has not actually been playing basketball for a particularly long time, and because of that Ilrock should not be overthinking the matchup or psyching himself out over it. Hearing that, the guy sitting beside the coach gets genuinely surprised by what Donghwa noticed, so the coach explains to him that even for someone as talented and experienced as Donghwa, successfully blocking a player who has a 20-centimeter height advantage over him is an absolutely remarkable feat. Furthermore, the coach adds that Donghwa must have picked up on something that felt a little off and unusual during the earlier screenplays. He also says that through those observations he became certain that Harem pretty much only has simple right-side paint shots in his arsenal and does not have a whole lot more variety beyond that when it comes to his offensive game. The coach then points out that when really skilled players are out there competing, they naturally develop tendencies of whoever they are going up against, and what that means in this particular situation is that Harem actually possesses sharp observation skills and a kind of raw animal-like instinct that makes him dangerous in ways that go beyond just his physical size alone. The match continues with Harem trying to pass the ball to his teammate, but Donghwa intercepts it because it's his greatest weapon. After that, Donghua passes the ball back to Kangwi, who runs straight towards the basket and scores. Meanwhile, at Jong Wong High School break time, the students in the class wonders if Kangwi and Ilrock are playing well, so they decide to watch the match on YouTube Live. During the second quarter, Jong Wong performs so well that they now have 32 points while the other team only has 22. The boys watching the match get surprised to see that it's only a 10-point difference, and they start laughing, seeing that Kangwi looks so small standing among them. After that, the other team's player throws the ball towards the basket, but it rebounds, so Donghua gets it and passes it to Kangwi. Instead of running himself, he makes another pass by throwing the ball to another player. The guy then quickly goes over to the basket and scores a point, surprising everyone. The redhead then tells Kangwi that it's a fast break, then he should run, and he should tell him he's conserving energy. At the same time, Unchai is watching the game, wondering if Kangwi was always this unselfish. The people watching the game thinks that Jong Wong High's Kangwi is nothing special and how Ilrock was talking all big. At the post box, the girl thinks that Kangwi's performance is slow, and after being figured out as a beginner, he's been mostly neutralized. Myung's coach then turns to Harem on the sideline and tells him to go ahead and pull out of the situation if things are not working in his favor, rather than forcing it and making things worse. Over on the other side of things, a blonde-haired guy from another team leans over to his partner and asks him whether their next opponent is going to be Myung High, and also brings up the fact that their coach has been really set on and interested in getting Kangwi on their side. After that, the match picks back up with Myung High setting up a screening play, and one of their players manages to get a shot off while being closely chased down by a defender. The ball then travels on a path heading straight toward the basket, but before it can get all the way there, Harem appears out of absolutely nowhere and shoves one of the Jong Wong High players out of the way in a move that catches everyone off guard. The press box guy then thinks to himself that even if the opposing player is relatively new to the game and still developing, dealing with that kind of extreme height advantage is never going to be a simple or easy task for anyone, regardless of how skilled they are. He then goes ahead and throws the ball into the basket, bringing his team's total up to 24 points, while Jong Wong High is sitting comfortably ahead at 34 points, maintaining a meaningful lead as the game continues to play out. Now it is Ilrock's turn to step up as he gets the ball and finds himself in a one-on-one situation directly against Harem with nobody else to help either of them. Ilrock then manages to burst right past Harem, and as he gets closer and closer to the basket, he pulls off a slick and deceptive fake that completely fools Harem and sends him the wrong way, before finishing the play by throwing the ball into the basket from the other side in a way that nobody saw coming. Seeing that sequence of moves play out, everyone watching reacts with genuine shock, and the general feeling among the crowd is that Ilrock is clearly still operating at a level above Harem, and that the difference in overall skill and basketball intelligence between the two of them is very real and very noticeable. However, despite being impressed by what he is seeing from Ilrock out there, the press box guy still cannot quite wrap his head around the fact that a player of Ilrock's caliber ended up choosing to go to Jong Wong High of all places, given that he was the star player and ace of Gunam Middle School and was part of a team that won the national tournament championship. Myung High makes the decision to substitute Harem out of the game and bring Dongwoo in to replace him, and as Harem comes off the court, he tells the coach with a sense of disappointment that he got exposed as a beginner right away and was not able to hide his inexperience for very long at all. On the other side of things, one of the Jongwon players finally lets out a breath of relief now that Harem has come off the court, and he also quietly acknowledges to himself that his own stamina is not completely full either after everything he has had to deal with during the time Harem was out there. Donghua then gathers his teammates and tells them that they need to take full advantage of the time that Harem is sitting on the bench and push hard to widen the score gap as much as they possibly can while he is out. The match then continues with Jong Wong High extending their lead and pulling ahead to 44 points while Myung High is still sitting back at 28 points and struggling to keep pace. With that, the second quarter finally comes to a close, and the general feeling among everyone watching is that while Myung High came out with some genuinely strong and promising early momentum at the start of the game, they completely fell apart as things went on and now find themselves staring at a 16-point deficit going into the second half. One of the girls watching then adds her own observation to the conversation by pointing out that the paint area in particular showed a noticeable and significant improvement once Ilrock came into the game and started making his presence felt down low. The guy then notices Kangwi, thinking that he thought there would be something since he's a starting freshman like Ilrock, but there's nothing special. The redhead guy then tells Kangwi that it looked like he was really nervous because he did not show that amazing dribbling even once. However, Kangwi brushes the concern aside and points out that they are winning the game comfortably enough as it is, and he also takes the opportunity to remind the red-headed guy that his three-pointers did not even go in until the middle of the second quarter. The red-headed guy quickly fires back and says that he only really performs at his best when the game is tight and the pressure is on. Kangwi then excuses himself and heads off to the bathroom, but Donghua notices him slipping away and makes the quiet decision to follow after him. When Donghua gets there, he notices that Kangwi is already in the middle of a conversation with some other players he does not recognize, so he walks over and asks Kangwi whether he happens to know these people. Donghua then turns to Kangwi with a look of genuine concern and asks him directly whether something is going on with him, because from what Donghua has been observing out on the court, it really seems like Kangwi is not playing anywhere near the level that he is capable of. Kangwi then opens and tells Donghua that the people he was just talking to are guys he used to play basketball with all the way back through middle school. He also reveals for the first time that he comes from Myeong Middle School, which explains the complicated feelings he has been carrying around since the tournament bracket was announced. Hearing that, Donghua also puts things together and asks whether the people from Kangwi's middle school days all went straight to Myeong High, to which Kangwi replies that most of them did end up going there but that he himself ran away after the final tournament was over. Donghua then asks him whether he is talking about the end of his second year of middle school, and Kangwi opens up and explains that back then he simply did not think there would be any high school out there willing to accept him given how short he was, and that he did not have the mental strength or perseverance to keep pushing through and endure watching everyone around him continuing to grow taller while he stayed the same. He goes on to explain that in the end everything just came crashing down on him and he got completely and miserably crushed by it all, and he admits that he essentially ran away from the whole situation rather than facing it head on. He also mentions that back during that difficult time, the other team members had actually tried their best to hold him back and keep him from leaving, doing what they could to convince him to stay. Kangwi then thinks quietly to himself that after the way he left things back then, walking out so coldly and without much of an explanation, running into these people again now in a situation like this feels genuinely embarrassing and shameful. Donghua then asks Kangwi if he is planning on playing properly if they get reversed in the second half. He further explains that every game where they build real experience and chemistry with him is really precious to them, but he also thinks that it's a waste not to use this opportunity. Donghua also reminds him that the coach said the same thing, that he should show his 100% no matter who the opponent is and they should play properly for their team in the second half. During the third quarter, Kangwi gets his hands on the ball, but the people watching from the stands begin to wonder out loud amongst themselves whether he somehow bribed the coach just to get himself out on the court again in this round. Kangwi then raises his hand and holds up 3 fingers, and the moment he does that every single one of his teammates shifts and adjusts their position accordingly without needing any further instruction. The team then goes ahead and executes an isolation tactic, which is a strategic play where space is deliberately cleared out so that one specific player can go ahead and attack their defender in a straight-up one-on-one situation without any interference. Kangwi then finds himself locked in a one-on-one battle against one of the opposing team's players, and in that moment he finally manages to get out of his own head and take control of himself, bursting right past the defender in a flash of speed that leaves the guy with absolutely no chance of keeping up. After blowing past his defender, a whole group of opposing players including Harem himself immediately converge and swarm toward Kangwi in an attempt to cut him off and stop whatever he is about to do. Kangwi then takes in the situation around him in a split second and realizes that pretty much every single player on the opposing team is zeroing in on him at that exact moment, but as he quickly scans the court he spots Ilrock making a run and getting himself open. Without hesitating, Kangwi fires a long pass in Ilrock's direction, and Ilrock catches it cleanly before throwing it straight inside the basket to score. After that, everyone watching is completely blown away and surprised by the alley-oop dunk they just witnessed, with many of them remarking that this is the very first time they have ever seen Kangwi and Ilrock pull off a collaboration play together like that. The boys sitting in the audience as they talk amongst themselves about how insane that dunk was, and several of them add that Kangwi's dribbling in the moments leading up to it was somehow even more impressive and jaw-dropping than the finish itself. On the other side, one of the opposing team's players is trying to stay focused and thinks to himself that they need to find a way to close the gap and catch up at least a little bit before things get completely out of hand. As he surveys the court and reads the defense, he notices that Jong Wong High has set up a deny defense on Harem, which is a persistent and deliberate defensive method where the defender plants himself directly in front of the offensive player and cuts off the passing lane entirely so that the ball cannot reach them in the first place. He also picks up on the fact that the overall defensive scheme has shifted to a 2-3 zone setup, which means that finding a clean passing lane to get the ball inside is going to be a real challenge from this point forward. Upon seeing that, Kangwi's friends start talking amongst themselves and one of them explains to the others that what they are currently seeing Jong Wong High run is called a 2-3 zone defense, which is the specific defensive system that their school has been using throughout the game. One of them then tells the other to look closely at the court, pointing out that there are 2 players guarding the perimeter while 3 players are staying inside the paint. Instead of marking each opponent one by one, they are defending specific zones on the court. Because of this 2-3 formation, there are 3 players protecting the paint area so they can more easily stop that tall player near the basket. The girl from the post box then asks the guy standing next to her if this kind of defense would not create many open chances for shots from the perimeter. The guy replies that it is simply a matter of choice, explaining that they are willing to allow some outside attempts because they are focusing on firmly blocking the 2-point shots near the basket. Just then, a player from Jong Hai throws the ball toward the basket, but the shot misses and the ball rebounds off the rim. At that moment, Donghua quickly grabs the rebound. At the same time, the press box guy says that the Jong Wong High coach made absolutely the right call by putting more emphasis and strength in the paint area. He further says that by doing that they are able to cut off and eliminate number 11's offensive rebound opportunities almost entirely. On top of that, he points out that aside from number 2, there does not appear to be anyone else on Jong Hai's roster who has the real shooting ability to consistently knock down 3-pointers from the outside. Kangwi's friend sitting in the stands then wonders why Jong Wong High did not just go ahead and defend that way right from the very beginning of the game, pointing out that things would have been a whole lot easier if they had simply gone with zone defense from the start. Right at that moment, a beautiful girl walks over toward them and jumps into the conversation by telling them that zone defense can actually only be used starting from the 3rd quarter and not before that, which catches the boys completely off guard and surprises them. She goes on to explain that according to the regulations set out by the Korean Middle and High School Basketball Federation, all teams are required to play man-to-man defense throughout the entire first half of every game without exception. One of the boys then asks her why that particular rule even exists in the first place. She explains that the reasoning behind it goes back to a period when pretty much every team was defaulting to zone defense all the time, and that the Federation decided to partially restrict certain defensive tactics. It was specifically in order to push individual players to develop and sharpen their own personal defensive skills and capabilities rather than relying on team schemes to cover for weaknesses. The other boy then recognizes the girl as Urim, who always sit in front row of their class. After that, all 3 of them decide to watch the match together. During the match, the ball finds its way to Harem, but he immediately realizes that Ilrock is right on his heels and chasing him down closely from behind. Harem puts everything he has into trying to get away and create some separation, but he simply cannot manage to do it as Donghua suddenly appears directly in front of him at the same time, and the 2 of them work together to set up a double team that traps Harem and gives him nowhere to go. Donghua then manages to strip the ball clean out of his opponent's hands, and it quickly finds its way over to the red-headed guy, who then wastes absolutely no time in passing it straight back to Kangwi, who takes off running toward the basket at a speed that genuinely shocks and surprises everyone in the building. A boy steps directly into Kangwi's path in an attempt to cut him off and stop his momentum, but he simply cannot get a hold of him or slow him down in any meaningful way as Kangwi just blows right past him like he is not even there. After getting past the last defender, Kangwi throws the ball inside the basket and the whole stadium erupts with surprise and excitement at what they just witnessed, with pretty much everyone in attendance reacting to the play in a way that makes it very clear that they did not expect someone of Kangwi's size to be capable of moving and finishing at that kind of level against players who are significantly bigger and longer than he is. At the same time, a girl and a boy who happen to be standing outside the stadium look at each other in confusion and wonder what on earth is going on inside the gym today, because the level of cheering coming from inside is unlike anything they have heard before. The match then continues with Kangwi once again getting his hands on the ball, and this time he weaves and drives his way past every single member of the opposing team one after another as though they are all standing completely still. Seeing that display of speed and skill, the people up in the press box make the collective decision to dedicate a special line in their coverage specifically to Kangwi, describing him as the shortest guard who is going to be the one to complete Jong Wong High's run and gun style of play and take it to a whole new level. Kangwi then puts the ball through the basket one final time, and with that Jong Wong High wins the match and finishes with a dominant final score of 85 points. Myung's coach walks over to Harem and takes a moment to remind him that this is his very first tournament experience. He further explains that because of that he should not be sitting there feeling sad and down on himself over how things went because he genuinely did a good job out there all things considered. Harem responds by telling the coach with clear determination in his eyes that he is going to go back and practice even harder than before and that he is going to get so much better as a result. Meanwhile, Kangwi's friends are still in the middle of celebrating everything that happened when Urim's friends show up at the classroom and ask her what she is up to and what all the excitement is about. Urim tells them that their school's basketball team is currently competing in a tournament match, and the girls immediately perk up and start gushing about how nice it is that Ilrock is on the team. Kangwi's friend then quickly jumps in and points out that they should also know that besides Ilrock, Kangwi is on the basketball team as well and has been playing in the games, but the girls respond by asking whether he really actually gets to play in real games. The girls then start making fun of Kangwi and say that there is no way he can play properly because of how short he is, but Kangwi's friends fire back and tell them that if they had actually been there watching today's game with their own eyes, they would not be saying any of that. Urim then steps in and tells the girls that Kangwi's dribbling was so impressive and on point that he single-handedly took care of all the fast breaks throughout the game and did an outstanding job connecting all the plays together in a way that made it easy for the rest of the team to get their scoring opportunities. In addition to that, she tells them with full confidence that Kangwi's performance is only going to shine even brighter and stand out even more when they start going up against the stronger and more competitive teams in the tournament. Hearing that, Kangwi's friends get genuinely moved and touched by everything they just witnessed and experienced, and they turn to Urim and ask her whether she would like to come and watch tomorrow's game together with them, to which she happily agrees. On the other hand, Kangwi's old middle school classmates make their way over to him after the game and tell him that he did a really great job out there today, and they are genuinely glad that he did not end up quitting basketball and walking away from the sport entirely. One of them goes further and opens up by saying that he was really worried and concerned when Kangwi said he was going to quit, and admits that looking back on everything it feels like they were not doing enough to support him and properly recognize the level of talent he actually had all along. He goes on to say that back in middle school none of them could keep up with Kangwi's speed during practice, and as a result they kept getting scolded by the coach even though it was not really Kangwi's fault. The guy also brings up the fact that back in middle school, none of them could keep up with Kangwi's speed during practice and games, and as a result they kept getting scolded and told off by the coach even though it was not really Kangwi's fault at all that they could not match his pace, and he admits that because of that situation all of them ended up being too hesitant and uncertain around him rather than embracing what made him special. The guy then shifts the mood slightly by poking fun at Kangwi's height in a friendly way, saying that it looks like he might have grown a little bit too and asking whether he has finally managed to break past the 170 centimeter mark yet. He further tells Kangwi that in dead ball situations, he still hasn't fixed the habit of signaling passing space with his eyes as sharp defenders can catch on immediately and block. Seeing Kangwi like that, all of them feels really happy that he is doing so well and as they were enemies, but it was fun running on the same court after so long. After they leave, Donghua arrives and says that Kangwi really played basketball with good people. Kangwi replies that he didn't have to worry about others' opinions and thanks to what seniors said, he is glad he played with all his strength. Kangwi then decides that this time he is not going to run away no matter what happens. Meanwhile, Unchai is actually sitting in the middle of her class and secretly analyzing all of the team victories from the tournament so far. At this point she is feeling genuinely excited and eager to see how the upcoming matchup between the two teams is going to play out. The next match on the schedule turns out to be between Tay Jong and Wapyeong, and right from the opening moments both teams are going at each other with everything they have in an incredibly intense and evenly matched battle. One of Wapyeong's players gets possession of the ball first and immediately fires a quick pass over to their blonde-headed guy, who receives it and uses his impressive physical strength to simply shove one of the opposing players aside with such a shocking amount of force. Right at that moment, Tay Jong's silver-headed guy steps in and strips the ball clean out of his hands, and he then tries to take off and push the pace in the other direction but finds his path immediately cut off by Tay Jong's number 2 player who gets in his way. He then makes a quick decision and sends the ball off to one of his teammates, who receives it and goes up to attempt a shot, but the opposing team's player gets there in time and blocks it before it can go anywhere near the basket. With that, the score sits at a complete tie with only 2 minutes remaining on the clock, which sets up what is shaping up to be an absolutely racking finish to the game. Now the ball gets over to the Wapyeong players and rather than pushing the pace they simply pass it around amongst themselves while they take their time getting into their proper positions on the court. Watching that from the bench, some of the players sitting there think to themselves that the moment right after the block was a perfect opportunity to push ahead and go for a quick fast break, and yet Wapyeong is deliberately choosing to slow things down and lower the tempo instead of taking advantage of the opening. Another one of the boys then weighs in and explains that Jong High's real strength lies in their set offense, which takes full advantage of their height and that the expected scoring value they get out of running their pre-planned set plays is actually significantly higher than what they would get from playing a faster. As he explains it, set offense is essentially an attacking method where a team creates scoring opportunities by running through carefully pre-planned and rehearsed movements rather than relying on transition opportunities. The player who currently has the ball then launches a long pass down the court to another one of the Wapyeong players, who receives it and immediately puts in as much effort as he can to get himself to the other side of the court as quickly as possible, and once he gets there he sends the ball along to one of his waiting teammates to continue moving the offense forward. With that, Wapyeong player scores a point for the team, surprising everyone. With 1 minute and 30 seconds left on the clock, the Tay Jong players start pushing with even greater intensity and physicality, and Kangwi watches from the sidelines thinking to himself that the game is getting noticeably rough and physical as the final moments approach. After that, the Tay Jong players begin moving the ball through the inside positions, and the silver-headed guy gets his hands on it and drives forward with determination. He then puts everything he has into trying to throw the ball into the basket, but one of the Wapyeong High players comes crashing hard into him in the process and the referee immediately calls the foul. With that call, the Tay Jong player is awarded 2 free throws, and everyone watching thinks to themselves that Sanjian is just incredibly skilled and clever when it comes to drawing fouls out of opposing players. As a direct result of that foul call, a Wapyeong player by the name of Juhyun gets disqualified from the game entirely because those foul pushes him to 5 fouls total, which is the limit. Seeing that development play out, Donghwa turns to Kangwi and tells him that when they eventually face Tay Jong Hai, the whole team is going to need to be really careful about the fouls that Tay Jong subtly and cleverly draws through their rough style of play. Kangwi responds by saying that from what he is watching, it looks like Tay Jong might seem like a team that only relies on raw physical strength, but they are actually playing in a surprisingly smart and calculated way underneath all of that. The ball then gets back to Sanjian for the free throws, and he steps up to the line and knocks in the first one with ease to put his team ahead. One of the players with black t-shirt sitting in the audience seat thinks that after Sanjian established himself as Tay Jong Hai's playmaker, Tay Jong Hai is no longer just a school that plays with strength. As the match continues, Sanjian gets an injury on his leg and thinks that the opposite team player did that on purpose, so he gets furious at him. Quickly all the players spread out on the court and Tay Jong players says that the other team's player pushed intentionally on landing as it was physical contact. The coach then gives number 13 of the opposite team pushing foul, but he starts acting all smart about it, so a muscular Tay Jong player steps forward and asks if he is trying to start something now. Sanjian tries to calm him down and says that he should focus on the game instead, but the guy asks him if his ankle is alright. Sanjian tells everyone that he is alright overall, but that his muscles seized up from the impact and he does not think he is going to be able to keep playing through it the way he was before, but even so he points out that they got free throws out of it because of the team foul and that they should use that opportunity to start closing the gap. Donghwa then turns to Kangwi and tells him that this is a really rough and physical environment to be playing in, and warns him to make sure he does not get swept up in the intense atmosphere when they play tomorrow's game and let it affect the way he normally plays. After that, Tay Jong Sanjian is taken out of the game with Youngman coming in to replace him, and the team is also awarded their free throws to take. However, the Tay Jong player then misses the first free throw badly and completely off target, which makes one of the Wapyeong players watching think to himself that there might be a pretty significant gap in quality between Tay Jong Hai's starters and the players coming off the bench to replace them. Team Wapyeong High then calls a timeout, and during the break their coach gathers everyone together and tells the team that even though they gave up the lead at some point during the game, the fact that Sanjian is now out of the game is absolutely huge and changes the entire picture going forward in their favor. The match then resumes with a Wapyeong player holding the ball, but Kangwi watches how they are setting things up and finds himself wondering whether they are running some kind of different pattern than what he has seen from them before. The blonde player from Wapyeong then calmly passes the ball back to his teammate. That teammate quickly steps forward and takes a three-point shot, and the ball travels cleanly through the air before dropping straight into the basket without touching anything else. After that three-pointer goes in, Wapyeong High increases the lead and the score gap between the two teams becomes 2 points. Seeing this change on the scoreboard, the Jong Wong players who are watching from the sidelines begin thinking that this blonde player is definitely not an ordinary or average player at all. At the same time, they also realize that Tay Jong Hai is now in a very difficult situation because the clock is running down quickly and they are the ones chasing the score. Soon after that, the ball reaches one of the Tay Jong players while there are only about 40 seconds left on the clock. As he tries to move forward and create a play for his team, one of the Wapyeong players suddenly reaches in at the perfect moment and steals the ball straight out of his hands in a quick and clean motion. He takes possession of the stolen ball and takes off, which leaves everyone watching completely surprised and buzzing as they start wondering amongst themselves just how many steals Wapyeong High's number 2 player has racked up throughout the course of today's game alone. The Tay Jong player desperately runs after him, trying his best to catch up and return to the play, but there is simply no way he can stop him as the Wapyeong player keeps charging forward at full speed. Wapyeong then successfully finishes the chance and scores an easy 2 points, and with that basket their total score rises to 84 points while Tay Jong Hai stays behind at 80 points. Seeing this situation, Kangwi comments that with Tay Jong Hai's captain being out of the game, the team seems to be falling apart right away. However, another guy explains that the captain went out at a very crucial moment, and Wapyeong High's number 2 player has extremely strong defense. He adds that the moment this player notices even the smallest opening, he immediately goes for a steal just like he did now. In the end, the match finally comes to a close with Wapyeong High winning the game. Everyone watching feels that it was a very close and competitive match from the beginning until the final moment, and many of them think that if Tay Jong Hai's captain had not been disqualified and forced to sit out, the result of the game could have easily turned out very differently. Later that evening, Ilrock and the rest of the team gather together and start playing rock paper scissors to decide who will end up treating everyone today. While thinking about it, Kangwi begins wondering what the most expensive item in the convenience store might be. However, Ilrock quickly shuts down that idea right away and tells him that he should just focus on picking out some normal food instead. One of the other Jongwon players then turns to Donghua and asks him why he seems to have no energy left in him at all, and wonders whether it has something to do with watching the Tay Jong Hai vs Wapyeong High game earlier. Donghua replies that it is entirely because of that game and nothing else, and that after sitting there and watching everything play out, he is just feeling genuinely worried about what lies ahead for their team. He admits that he had always thought of Tay Jong Hai as a really strong and formidable team going in, and yet they still ended up losing the game, which means that no matter how things shake out, Jong Wong High is going to have to find a way to beat one of those two teams if they want any chance of advancing to the main tournament rounds. However, the other guy also thinks that the games between powerhouses are different as the game, tempo and strategy is all different, and Donghua says that they need to do something in tomorrow's match as the game will probably be the opposite of today's. He also mentions that when Tay Jong Hai's captain went down with the injury during the game, there was a brief moment where he found himself wondering whether that player was even going to be able to come back and participate in tomorrow's game at all, which added another layer of worry on top of everything else he was already feeling. Hearing that, one of the other players decides to step up and try to lift Dongwa's spirits, asking him where all those words of encouragement went that he used to dish out to everyone else so freely. He also reminds him that he was the same guy who used to say confidently that they would beat whatever school was put in front of them and advance to the main tournament in first place without any doubt. He also tells Donghua that it is okay to feel worried given that both Tay Jong Hai and Wapyeong High are genuinely strong teams that should not be taken lightly, but that their own team has been putting in an incredible amount of hard work as well, and that they absolutely have what it takes to come out on top this time around if they believe in themselves and play their game. Hearing that, something clicks back into place for Donghua and he realizes that he was not thinking clearly about the whole situation, and that this time around things is different because they have Kangwi on their side. He further thinks that if every single one of them comes together and combines their abilities, there is genuinely something special that they can pull off together as a team. Meanwhile, Kangwi and Ilrock start arguing with each other again, and Donghua tries to step in and calm them down before things get worse. Later that night, the team is relaxing together in their hotel room after the game. During their conversation, one of the guys asks the others who they think deserves the MVP title for today's match. Kangwi quickly says that he is obviously the MVP because everyone clearly saw how the fast break developed and how well he handled the one-on-one dribbling during the game. However, the others say that the MVP might actually be Ilrock because he fought well on the court even while facing a player who was around 210 centimeters tall. Kangwi immediately disagrees with that and says that Ilrock lost all the rebounds and did not really do much during the match. After hearing that, Ilrock pulls out his phone and shows everyone an article he found that mentions both Kangwi and himself. When the team sees the article, they all thank Kangwi because they believe that thanks to his performance, their team was able to get featured in the article. Kangwi gets mad about the article, but Donghua says that the content written inside it is quite good, talking about the alley-oop pass with Ilrock at the end of the game. Ilrock then tries to mess with Kangwi again, saying next time he should throw it a bit higher because he threw it as low as his height, the pass almost got intercepted and he almost couldn't finish properly. Moreover, the other player then reads an article about Tay Jong Hai's defeat, noticing that it was made more bitter by Sanjian's unknown injury. Meanwhile, Sanjian makes his way back to the court where his teammates gather around him and ask what the doctor had to say about the state of his injury. Sanjian tells them that the doctor said there is no problem with him playing, so they should stop worrying about him and focus on getting ready for the game. However, what Sanjian's teammates do not know is that he is not telling them the whole truth about what the doctor actually said. One of his teammates thinks to himself that this whole situation is happening because Sanjian has not been keeping up with his strength training the way he should have been, and another one of them asks him whether he is at least doing his exercises for his ankle extensors on a regular basis. As it turns out, what the doctor actually told Sanjian was that there appears to be a mild sprain and that the best thing for him to do would be to rest for 2 to 3 days and let it heal properly. But if he absolutely insists on playing in tomorrow's game, then he can get through it with the help of painkillers along with either tape or a brace to provide some support, with the downside being that he cannot realistically expect to be performing at 100% of his normal level. One of the other guys then points out to Sanjian that if he goes ahead and plays tomorrow, he is going to have to sit out the following game entirely. The doctor backs that up by explaining he is holding himself together with painkillers, so he must give his body proper rest. If he pushes things too hard tomorrow, there is a real risk of it developing into a serious problem. Tay Jong's coach turns to Sanjian and asks him directly whether there is really any need for him to be pushing himself out there while relying on painkillers to get through it. However, Sanjian is completely firm on the matter and tells the coach that the only way they open up the path to the main tournament rounds is by beating Jong Wong High, and that even if it turns out that he cannot play in the game against Myung High afterward, he absolutely has to be out there and playing tomorrow no matter what the cost is to his body. He also adds that he personally wants to go head-to-head against Kangwi because he still feels deep down like he has not shown everything he is truly capable of yet, and that there is unfinished business between them that needs to be settled out on the court. The coach listens to everything Sanjian has to say, and while he understands where that passion is coming from, he also cannot help but feel a deep sense of concern about what pushing through an injury like this. He also thinks that it could mean for Sanjian's body and his long-term health going forward beyond just this one tournament and this one game that feels so important right now in this moment. On the other hand, Donghua gathers the team and tells everyone that Sanjian did not look like he was too badly hurt from what they could observe, and that regardless of whether Sanjian ends up playing or sitting out, the fact that Tay Jong Hai is an incredibly strong and dangerous team does not change one single bit, and they need to approach the game with full seriousness. The team then starts talking amongst themselves about how they came extremely close but ended up losing by just a few points during the March tournament, and Kangwi jumps in and asks why Ilrock's monster dunks did not do enough to change the outcome back then. Donghua then explains that Tay Jong Hai's so-called gym trio is actually pretty well known and has built up quite a following on Instagram specifically because of the weightlifting journey they have been documenting and sharing on their account. Donghua also brings up the fact that he himself posts a lot of lifting videos on his account too, but his followers never seem to go up no matter how consistently he posts, which is frustrating especially when compared to the gym trio who have managed to rack up a whopping 14,000 followers on their account. Kangwi then starts poking fun at Ilrock and tells him that he would get completely knocked back and pushed around with just one post-up move given the way his body is built. One of the guys jumps in and points out that Ilrock has actually been putting on some serious muscle recently. So, this time around things is going to be different from what Kangwi is expecting. Getting fired up and annoyed by the teasing, Ilrock reaches over and grabs Kangwi before starting to do squats while holding him, which immediately gets on Kangwi's nerves and makes him complain loudly about the whole thing, demanding to be put down while Ilrock just keeps going without showing any sign of stopping anytime soon. Later that night, Kangwi finds himself sitting quietly and thinking deeply about something, which catches Ilrock's attention and prompts him to ask what is going on in his head. Kangwi then turns to Ilrock and asks him how much higher he needs to throw the ball on the alley-oop pass in order for Ilrock to be able to catch it cleanly and finish the play. Ilrock takes a moment to think it over carefully before responding that Kangwi can put it about 30 centimeters higher than where he has been throwing it. He adds that the earlier pass was actually not bad at all, but that getting it about one full ball higher would make things significantly easier and cleaner for him to work with. After that, everyone settles into their own space for the night and spends the remaining hours before the big game doing their own individual things to prepare themselves mentally and physically for what is coming. The next day, everyone gathers at the court for the match, including the entire Jong Wong High team. The coach pulls everyone together and tells them that if they manage to come out with another win today, their chances of making it through to the main tournament rounds are going to go up significantly. However, one of the players brings up the fact that Tay Jong Hai is going to be coming in with everything they have today as well, and that they are an incredibly strong and well-prepared team that should not be underestimated for even a single moment. The team then notices that Tay Jong Hai has their own banner displayed prominently at the court, and seeing that, the players turn to their coach and ask whether their team has something like that too. The coach replies that they do actually have one, but that it has been sitting in storage and collecting dust for years without being used. Kangwi then speaks up and tells the coach that they should bring it back out, and the coach agrees that it is a good idea. Donghua suggests that they can ask Eunchai to bring it along with her when she comes to join them on the weekend. The press box people talk about how if Tay Jong Hai loses here, their chances of being eliminated go up, and the girls adds that since Jong Wong High has been on a serious hot streak on lately, it should be a fierce matchup. The wonders if Sanjian play for Tay Jong, as if he can't play because of yesterday's injury, then it could be tough even for Tay Jong Hai. Furthermore, the guy says that the key point is whether that Jong Wong High guard's dribbling from yesterday will work against Tay Jong Hai too. Kangwi then shows up on the press box and asks them if they are talking about him. He then says that he enjoyed that photo they took for the article yesterday and tries to correct them, saying his height was being compared to 210 centimeters was extremely disrespectful. The press box people then congratulate him on his win and praise the performance he put on, but Kangwi tells them with full confidence that they should make sure to have their cameras ready and get another good picture today, because he is going to show them those Tay Jong guys laid out flat underneath him, and on top of that he makes it very clear that yesterday he did not even come close to showing half of what he is actually capable of. Once he walks away, the press box people look at each other and think to themselves that this is genuinely the first time a player has ever come up to them and spoken to them in such a bold and direct way like that, and it leaves quite an impression on them. On the other side of things, Tay Jong's coach stands with his team and expresses his hope that everyone is going to be in good shape and ready to go today, especially after the difficult and demoralizing loss they had to sit through and watch the previous day. The coach then asks the team whether they have a solid understanding of how Jong Wong High plays based on having faced them the last time around, and he points out that this time Jong Wong High has a guard who can really dribble and handle the ball at a high level, which is something they are going to need to account for and prepare for carefully. Right before the match gets started, the coach pulls Sanjian aside and tells him firmly not to overdo it out there, and Sanjian responds by telling him simply and calmly that he is going to do just enough to get the win and nothing more. Meanwhile, Donghua spots Sanjian on the court during warm-ups and immediately finds himself wondering whether his ankle is actually in good enough shape to be playing on, and as he looks more carefully he notices that Sanjian is wearing a brace on it, which tells him that the injury is a much more serious concern than Sanjian has been letting on to everyone around him. The other players sitting in the audience seating area also take notice and point out amongst themselves that Tay Jong Hai's three big men positioned under the rim are absolutely massive in terms of their physical size, which is something that is going to create real problems for Jong Wong High. The match then gets officially underway with Ilrock winning the opening tip-off and getting the ball on his side of the court, using his height advantage. The ball then quickly finds its way over to Kangwi, but the moment he gets it in his hands, he immediately notices that Sanjian is standing right there. Sanjian then thinks that Jong Wong High is a fast-temp skill-focused team, and they can only win if they break that rhythm. Kangwi then sends a pass toward another one of his teammates, but a Tay Jong player steps in at just the right moment and manages to intercept the ball before it can reach its intended target, and it quickly finds its way over to Sanjian. He then takes off running hard toward the other side of the court while Kangwi immediately starts giving chase and doing his best to stay with him, but right at that moment Sanjian pulls off a slick back pass to one of his waiting teammates without even looking, completely catching everyone off guard. After receiving that pass, the player charges straight toward the basket and finishes with an easy and emphatic score that puts the first points of the game on the board for his team and leaves pretty much everybody watching completely speechless. The red-headed guy then suddenly puts it all together and finally understands why there were so many female spectators filling up the seats today, realizing that they were all there specifically hoping to catch a glimpse of Woo Hyun out on the court. Up in the press box, the people covering the game also react with surprise at seeing a dunk come on the very first basket of the game. One of them thinks to himself that it is a calculated statement by Tay Jong Hai, essentially sending a clear message that they intend to come in and completely crush any momentum that Jong Wong High might try to build up. He then turns to the female press member beside him and points out that Jong Wong High has a lot of first-year players on their roster, which means that they are particularly vulnerable to getting swept up by the intensity of the atmosphere in a situation like this one. The match then continues with Ilrock getting the ball and he tries his best to push one of the Tay Jong players, but he doesn't move at all. Seeing that, everyone in the court gets surprised that Tay Jong are not getting pushed back at all. Ilrock then fires a quick pass over to one of his teammates who catches it and immediately launches a three-point attempt, but before the ball can find its way into the basket a Tay Jong player reaches up and steals it right out of the air. Now the ball is in the hands of the Tay Jong player, who powers his way forward and manages to push Ilrock aside with surprising ease before driving straight toward the basket with full force and determination. However, just before Donghua and another player can get into position to cut him off and stop him, he pulls off a slick back pass to one of his waiting teammates without breaking stride. That teammate then catches the ball and quickly scores the second basket of the game, shocking everyone. The general feeling among the crowd is that Tay Jong is operating on a completely different level compared to how they looked during yesterday's game, as though something has clicked into place. One of the guys watching points out that up through their first year as a team they pretty much only knew how to rely on raw brute physical force to get things done, but that somewhere along the way they went ahead and added intelligent and well thought out strategic movement on top of that physical foundation. He also thinks to himself that every single one of those big physical players is being directed entirely on Sanjian's instructions, and that Sanjian is essentially the brain of the whole operation, pulling all of those physically gifted players up to 100% of their potential. After that, Donghua pulls Ilrock aside and tells him that he is going to go ahead and take on Dusiop himself, so the two of them need to switch up their defensive matchups accordingly. He thinks to himself that Ilrock has a clear height advantage when it comes to guarding Jianwo, which means that particular matchup is going to be a much more manageable situation for Ilrock to handle compared to what he was dealing with before. Kangwi then tries to stir things up and start a little argument with Ilrock right there in the middle of the game, which immediately gets him scolded by one of the other players who tells him to focus and cut it out. The match then picks back up with Ilrock getting his hands on the ball, and one of the opposing players on the Tay Jong side thinks to himself that Ilrock keeps attacking and driving toward the basket over and over again without ever kicking the ball back out to his teammates when the defense closes in on him. Going back to an earlier moment, Sanjian had already told that same player that he better understand better than anyone just how powerful and intense Ilrock's competitive drive to prove himself really is, and that the best thing they can do is simply use that burning competitiveness against him. The player then takes a closer look at how Ilrock has been playing and notices that he has not changed at all since the last time the two teams faced each other and concludes that Ilrock still has not committed to doing proper strength training. Hearing that, Ilrock gets furious and aggressively pushes the guy on the ground. With that, Ilrock gets pushing foul and turns out this might be the plan of Tay Jong Hai from the beginning. Sanjian then notices that the matchup has shifted with Ilrock now taking on the responsibility of guarding Jianwo, and recognizing that change he goes ahead and uses a screen technique to work his way past one of the Zhongwang players and create some space for himself. However, just as he gets through the screen, Ilrock suddenly appears right in front of him and cuts off his path, so Sanjian immediately makes the smart decision to pass the ball off to one of his teammates rather than forcing anything. That teammate then tries to drive toward the basket and go up for a score, but Ilrock comes crashing hard into him in the process, and the referee immediately calls a blocking foul on Ilrock for the contact. As a result of that foul call, Tay Jong Hai is awarded 2 free throws, which came directly from what many people watching can only describe as a pretty unnecessary and avoidable mistake from Ilrock. The people watching from the crowd shake their heads and think to themselves that there was absolutely no real need for that foul to happen in the first place, but at the same time they also acknowledge that the way Tay Jong Hai manages to draw fouls out of their opponents is simply on another level and incredibly difficult to defend against even when you know it is coming. On the other side, the press box guy looks on and thinks to himself that Ilrock is still a raw and unpolished player who has some real rough edges in his game, and that Tay Jong Hai is doing an exceptionally good job of identifying and exploiting those weaknesses to their full advantage. At the same time, Kangwi's friends are also gathered together back at school and watching the match as it plays out. One of the boys looks over at the girls who have joined them and asks them why they are even there watching the game with them given that they do not really care about basketball all that much on a normal day. The girl responds by telling him that while it is true that they do not particularly care about basketball itself, they absolutely do care about Ilrock, and that is more than enough reason for them to be there. One of the other boys then starts to worry out loud about the situation developing on the court, pointing out that Ilrock already has 2 fouls on him even though the whole team was supposed to be managing their foul situation really carefully when going up against a team like Tay Jong Hai. Urim then reminds everyone that in the last game Ilrock ran into early foul trouble as well and was not able to play freely or effectively because of it, and that things got so bad he actually ended up fouling out completely right at the start of the 4th quarter, which hurt the team at the worst possible time. Hearing that, one of the other guys processes the information and thinks to himself about how in basketball a player gets disqualified the moment they commit their 5th foul, which means that once a player racks up 4 personal fouls they become incredibly hesitant and scared of picking up that 5th one, forcing them to play in a much more passive and careful way rather than going all out the way they normally would. The match then continues with a Tay Jong player driving his way inside with the ball, and while making his move he manages to physically overpower Ilrock by using his elbow strength to push him out of the way and create space for himself. Seeing that play out, everyone watching thinks to himself that this guy is essentially nullifying the height difference between them through sheer raw physical strength alone, which is an unsettling thing to witness. The press box guy looks on and thinks to himself that Tay Jong Hai is playing an incredibly rough and physical brand of basketball while also drawing smart fouls on top of all that physicality, which means the game is completely being played at Tay Jong Hai's preferred pace and on their terms. Kangwi then gets frustrated and turns to Ilrock, telling him straight out to stop trying to match these guys with pointless strength battles and to start using his actual skills instead, because that is what is going to make a real difference out there. The ball then finds its way over to Kangwi, and he quickly gives his team a signal to run the isolation pattern that they have been working on. Kangwi then goes head-to-head directly against Sanjian in a one-on-one situation, and he immediately puts on a display of absolutely amazing dribbling skills that catches everyone watching off guard, including the press box guy who remembers what Kangwi told him earlier and makes sure to get his camera ready to capture a good picture right at that moment. Kangwi then moves Sanjian around for a bit, shifting him back and forth before suddenly exploding past him, and Sanjian desperately scrambles to follow and keep up with him but is clearly struggling to stay in front. Sanjian then ends up losing his footing and falling down to the ground, and it becomes clear that his ankle injury is making him overly cautious and hesitant in his movements in a way that is directly affecting his ability to stay in front of faster players. As he hits the ground, he thinks to himself that Kangwi is moving at a speed that is significantly faster than anything he had imagined or prepared for going into this game. Meanwhile, Kangwi takes full advantage of the moment and goes ahead and scores a point for his team, leaving absolutely everyone in the stadium surprised and buzzing about what they just witnessed. Every single person present in the stadium comes to the same conclusion that Kangwi dropped Sanjian flat on the ground using his ankle breaker technique, which is the kind of move that shifts the entire momentum of a game in one single instant. After that, Kangwi turns to Donghua and tells him that he needs him to get one clean and successful defensive stop so that Kangwi can really open things up and go at full speed without holding anything back. Deep down inside, Donghua thinks to himself that this team is a completely different and more dangerous version of themselves compared to the last time they faced Tay Jong Hai, and with that thought burning in his mind, the match continues as Donghua steps up and goes head-to-head against one of the big and muscular players from Tay Jong Hai's lineup. The opposing player puts everything he has into trying to push Donghua back and create some space, but Donghua simply does not budge even a little bit thanks to the impressive physical strength he has built up, leaving the opposing player with nowhere to go. The opposing player then decides to attempt a hook shot instead, but the ball does not find its way inside the basket and comes bouncing back off the rim as a rebound, and Ilrock jumps on the opportunity immediately and secures the ball before anyone else can get to it. The moment Ilrock gets the ball in his hands, Kangwi locks eyes with him and makes it very clear through his look alone that he wants the pass sent his way right now. After receiving the ball, Kangwi takes off running straight through the middle of the opposing players at a speed that genuinely catches everyone in the building completely off guard and leaves them stunned at what they are watching. Kangwi then finds himself coming face to face with another Tay Jong player who has planted himself in a solid defensive position close to the basket and is not moving. Sanjian then shouts out urgently to his teammate and tells him to cut Kangwi off immediately and not let him get any closer, because if he does, Kangwi is just going to go straight ahead and score a point for his team without any trouble at all. Kangwi then thinks to himself in that split second that he is going to have to try and force his way through with strength one more time whether he likes it or not. He then charges straight ahead while dribbling the ball and cuts hard to the other side in a move that even catches Donghua completely off guard with its boldness and unexpectedness. Donghua watches everything unfold and thinks to himself that Kangwi is the one who steps up and breaks through the wall whenever the team finds themselves stuck and unable to get things going, and that he is the final missing puzzle piece that the team has been needing all along to truly become complete. Kangwi then follows through and successfully scores by putting the ball cleanly into the basket, and with that the score now sits at Tay Jong Hai with 8 points while Jong Wong High has pulled themselves up to 4 points. After that play, absolutely everyone in the gym is left amazed and buzzing about what they just witnessed from Kangwi, including Yurim and all of her female friends who are watching with wide eyes and growing excitement. As it turns out, the 2 dribble moves that Kangwi just put on display were more than enough to completely flip the atmosphere inside the gym and shift the energy in a noticeable way, and the Tay Jong Hai offense that came right after that did not feel nearly as powerful, dominant, or intimidating as it had been looking before that moment. Tay Jong Hai then puts in their best efforts to try and get the ball into the basket on multiple occasions, but the ball just keeps bouncing off the rim and rebounding back out without going in no matter what they try. Eventually the ball finds its way over to Ilrock, and Kangwi immediately calls out to him and tells him to push the pace and go for the fast break right away. At first Ilrock hesitates, but then, he remembers what Kangwi told him, that he should stop trying to match them with pointless strength and use his skills. Realizing what is happening, Ilrock quickly gets himself into position and switches over to a face-up stance, which immediately catches Yurim's attention and surprises her. She then turns to her friends and takes a moment to explain the difference between the two techniques, telling them that attacking with your back turned toward the defender is what is known as a post-up, while attacking while directly facing your opponent the way Ilrock is doing right now is called a face-up. She goes on to further explain that a truly skilled player like Ilrock does not limit himself to just one of those techniques but is able to switch between post-ups and face-ups really effectively depending. Hearing all of that, the girls get even more fired up and genuinely excited about watching Ilrock out there on the court, and they find themselves eagerly hoping that he is going to go on and put together an absolutely incredible and memorable performance in the moments that lie ahead. Ilrock then puts his full range of skills on display and pulls off a beautifully deceptive move that completely fools the muscular player who is standing in his way before charging forward. Ilrock then moves around carefully in a way that is designed to slow the opposing player's feet down and get him off balance. Now when it looks like Ilrock is about to attempt a shot, the opposing player tries to steal the ball. Ilrock reads that reaction perfectly and shifts his body position at exactly the right instant before throwing the ball straight inside the basket. 2 months back, during the March Spring Federation Tournament, Tay Jong Hai and Jong Wong High are locked in a match against each other. In the main round of 8, Tay Jong Hai comes out on top and wins the game with a commanding lead, finishing at 79 points while Jong Wong High falls short at 66 points. Ilrock finds it incredibly difficult to come to terms with the loss and takes his frustration out by punching the locker in the waiting room, unable to contain the emotions building up inside him. After that painful defeat, Donghua and the rest of the team spend nearly 2 full months dedicating themselves to building up Ilrock's body and physical strength, and during that time Donghua tells him directly that when they get the chance to face Tay Jong Hai again, he is not going to be able to beat those guys by relying on strength alone and that he needs to develop other weapons in his game. Back in the present, Donghua thinks to himself that Ilrock has indeed gone ahead and developed another weapon over those 2 months that he has been quietly and steadily working on, and that weapon is his skill and effectiveness in the paint area. Once Ilrock goes up and scores, everyone around immediately starts appreciating what he just did and telling him that he did a great job out there. However, the opposing player on Tay Jong Hai's side is still feeling genuinely unsettled and nervous about what he just witnessed, thinking to himself that Ilrock's skills have clearly improved and grown in a very noticeable way compared to how he looked the last time the two teams faced each other. Now, there is just a 2-point difference separating both teams on the scoreboard with only 6 minutes remaining until the match comes to a close, which means every single possession from this point forward is going to carry enormous weight and importance. Sanjian turns to Jianwu and Siob and tells them not to worry about anything and to just focus on creating some space for the offense to work with. The match then continues with Dusiop getting his hands on the ball, and his particular specialty is a move that can only be described as a smash and crash approach where he simply lowers his head and charges straight forward without even bothering to look around at what is happening on either side of him, which catches everyone watching completely off guard. Dusiop then locks eyes with Ilrock and tells him with a confident look that strength is a skill and should be respected as one, but Ilrock chooses to say absolutely nothing back and just stares at him without giving him the satisfaction of a response. Meanwhile, Kangwi now has possession of the ball, but Sanjian is right up in his space and doing everything he can to cut off his options and make things difficult for him. Kangwi then decides to have a little fun with the situation and asks Sanjian where all that aggressive pressure that he was bringing earlier in the game has gone. Kangwi then launches into his dribbling routine, which is another one of his signature skill moves, and he works the ball around with such complete confidence that it leaves Sanjian standing there genuinely shocked. It turns out, the success of his earlier breakthrough play was more than enough to fill Kangwi with a surge of genuine confidence and the firm belief that his dribbling is effective and dangerous even when going up against elite-level players who are competing at the national stage. Kangwi then takes off and runs straight toward the basket with such an incredible and explosive burst of speed that even Sanjian cannot properly keep up with him or get his feet in a position to cut him off the way he needs to. Kangwi knew going into that moment that he was absolutely capable of blowing past at least one defender if he committed to it fully and trusted what he had shown earlier in the game. However, before Kangwi can even get all the way into the basket area and finish the play, Sanjian reaches out and grabs his arm in an attempt to slow him down, and because of that contact the referee immediately steps in and calls the foul. Sanjian then turns to Kangwi and apologizes to him for resorting to that kind of play. The match then resumes from the sideline, and before Sanjian can even get himself properly set, Kangwi receives the ball and immediately takes off running straight toward the inside position. Just then, another player appears in front of him, but Kangwi manages to dodge him and passes the ball back to the red head guy. He then throws a 3-pointer shot that goes straight inside the basket. The match continues with Kangwi running with the ball as fast as he possibly can before sending a pass over to another teammate who catches it and puts a point on the board for the team. Seeing how quickly everything is moving, everyone in the audience thinks to themselves that Jong Wong High is just running the court at a ridiculous pace and that their offensive possessions are not even lasting 7 seconds before they are already attacking the basket again. As it turns out, every single time Jong Wong High gets their hands on the ball, the crowd is probably all thinking the exact same thing, which is simply that this is a whole lot of fun to watch. Kangwi then gets the ball once again and goes right back at Sanjian, who digs in and tries everything he can to slow him down, but Kangwi keeps finding ways through. Before anyone in the building even really noticed it happening, the cheers and energy from the spectators who came out to watch the game had completely shifted direction and were now being aimed squarely at Jong Wong High, and the atmosphere inside the gym had naturally moved over to their side without anyone planning for it to happen that way. Finally, the second quarter comes to a close with Jong Wong High sitting on a double-digit lead, and seeing just how much stronger and more dangerous this version of Jong Wong High is compared to what they faced before, the Tay Jong Hai players cannot help but find one particular word creeping into their minds, and that word is defeat. The Tay Jong players think to themselves that Jong Wong High has gotten so strong that they have turned into a completely different team from the one they faced before, and that things are much tougher than they expected going into this game. One of the Tay Jong members then turns to another and points out that if they lose again this time, that will mean 2 losses in the tournament and they would basically be getting knocked out of the competition, which is not something anyone wants to think about. Sanjian then walks over to them and asks them straight up why they are even thinking about losing in the first place. He tells them not to get caught up in the energy that Jong Wong High has been building and that even though the other team is playing a fast run and gun style, all Tay Jong needs to do is stay calm and keep playing their own game. The coach then steps in and agrees with everything Sanjian just said, telling the whole team that he is completely right. He also brings up the fact that they did not draw nearly enough fouls during the second quarter, which means they are going to need to play a lot more aggressively going forward if they want to get back to controlling the pace of the game the way they are used to doing. Another guy then tells the team that Ilrock's foul count is still stuck at 2 and even if they are not specifically targeting team fouls, they should keep on attacking Ilrock's side. However, a player tells him that Ilrock must have regained his composure as he is not getting baited easily anymore. At that moment, Sanjian feels like he has no other choice and goes ahead and removes the brace from his leg so that he can move more freely and perform at a higher level without the restriction holding him back. The coach immediately tells him to put the brace back on, but Sanjian flat out refuses and tells him that there is no pain and that once they win this game he will sit out and rest during the match against Myung High. He thinks to himself that Myung High is a team they can beat without too much trouble, but that Jong Wong High is a completely different story because they have grown and developed to the point where Tay Jong simply cannot beat them unless every single person on the team goes absolutely all out from start to finish without holding anything back. Afterward, the third quarter gets underway with Sanjian getting the ball, and in a surprising turn of events he actually starts dribbling in a style that looks a lot like the way Kangwi handles the ball, which catches people off guard. Using a screen to his advantage, Sanjian manages to get past Kangwi and create some space for himself, but when Donghua steps up and cuts off his path he quickly reads the situation and passes the ball back to one of his waiting teammates. That player then launches into his signature smash and crash technique and charges straight toward the basket with full force. Donghua reaches in and makes contact with his hand in the process, and the referee calls the foul right away. With that call, Tay Jong Hai is awarded 2 free throws to add to their total. Meanwhile, Myung High is also sitting together and watching the match play out, and their coach turns to Harem and tells him to pay close attention to what is happening on the court because Tay Jong Hai runs their offense around a 2-man game that is built entirely around Sanjian as the central piece. He explains that the way the personal fouls keep steadily piling up combined with the brutal physical battles being fought on every single possession makes the game progressively tougher and more draining for everyone involved as things move deeper into the second half, which is exactly the kind of environment that Tay Jong Hai thrives in. At the same time, Urim is explaining things to the girls back at school, telling them that one of Tay Jong Hai's most important and reliable attacking weapons is that very same 2-man game the coach was just describing. She explains that the way it works is that 2 players team up and use a combination of screens and well-timed passes to carve out scoring opportunities for each other, and that this is especially effective and dangerous when combined with the physical dominance of Tay Jong Hai's powerful big 3 down low. Going back 1 year to a moment at Tay Jong Hai, Sanjian makes the decision to start training directly alongside the big 3 of the team in order to push himself and get better in ways he could not achieve on his own. Back in the present, Tay Jong Hai sets up their screens and uses them to get past the Jongwon players, and they manage to execute their offense even better than before and put another point on the board for their side. How long do you think it will take for Kangwi and Ilrock to put lead Jong Wong High to victory? Comment ankle breaker if you'd like a part 2 of this series. Make sure to like and subscribe the channel for more sports manhwa recaps.